A pretty complex topic because it's residential, commercial, affordable housing, non-affordable housing, for which you need qualified chartered accountants to explain.
And even a small move like that actually brings a lot of relief to a lot of the smaller builders and a lot of the newer players in the market.
So was REIT an equity or not was the big question. So this classification per se is a very good move.
It is not just a good move, it's a big boost to the REIT market itself.
Right.
It's just going to make the market more accessible.
I think this is a constant tussle which you see between judiciary and legislature.
It's not environmental, it's not real estate, it's not governance, it's common sense.
If you need to cut the trees, can you plant the trees somewhere else?
Now we can't sit and cry about it 50 years later.
Welcome back to another episode of the News Roundup with Prop News Time. Here we sit down with industry experts to discuss the latest events in the country and how it impacts the sector. With me today is Mr. Balaji Rao and Mr. Abhay Rao. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Thanks.
I'd like to start with talking about the Bombay High Court's recent judgment. It has ruled that developers in joint development agreements will face the GST liability only when the property ownership has actually transferred and not at the time of signing. Now, with JDAs growing at a rate of 150% year on year, this move is likely to reshape deal structures in India. I'd like to begin with asking you, how do you see it impacting project cash flows?
Well, to put it in context, we have to understand that as land prices keep becoming higher and higher, there will be more sort of joint development agreements. Then you see redevelopments, we see SRAs, you see all sorts of transactions. To take a step back, the government tries to see that at no stage do they lose on taxes for a particular transaction. Now, one has to understand that land or real estate is a state subject.
Right.
So, typically, it cannot be taxed by the center.
Okay.
And what the state can do is they have the stamp duty and the registration for property.
Correct.
But the government feels that wherever there is a service rendered, because if it is the goods, it can't be taxed. If it is a service rendered, then GST can be applied.
Right.
So this has been an on and off topic. It is a pretty complex topic because it's residential, commercial, affordable housing, non-affordable housing. Do you sell it all before the OC or you keep some stock till after the OC? Believe me, there are quite a few this thing for which you need qualified chartered accountants to explain.
Yes.
Okay. One of such complications came up as to when the incidence of GST is applicable in a JDA.
Right.
And the incidence of GST was the department had taken the stance that it would be straight away at the time of signing the JDA agreement.
Right.
Okay. This in the Goa bench of the Bombay High Court, because of one of the developers from Bangalore discussing it and trying to challenge it, came up as to really when does the rights move? Is it with the agreement or after the agreement?
Right.
It is very remarkable that in this case, an affidavit was actually given by the department to say it doesn't move at the time of signing the agreement, it moves after the agreement, at the time of the position.
Right.
And so if they are agreeing it, then why did this whole thing come up also?
Yeah.
Then technically the GST should have been applied right at the time of position, which was what the original case was until some over-enthusiastic person felt that why can't I tax it even ahead?
Right.
Now the question, what is more implied in this is, does it impact the cash flows of a project? Because this is a large component, 18% GST. It does impact. And in fact, because of this confusion, JDAs, which should have grown faster and more, have actually slowed down quite a bit today.
Okay.
Because whenever you create an uncertainty around a certain type of structuring, people will avoid it. Nobody wants to get into it and litigate and come out of it.
Right.
Okay. So this is not a real progressive this thing, I am not saying the government shouldn't tax the services, but I think it should be kept simpler and tax rates should naturally be lower, because whenever you have lower tax rates, they'll be better complied with.
Right.
Only when you have high tax rates, 18% is the highest slab now, literally, you're asking that people try to be clever to how to avoid it and circumvent it.
Yeah.
If it was a much lower tax rate, nobody would have even bothered. So, is it an impediment to JDAs? It is.
Okay.
But this particular judgment which you're talking about, is it positive? Yes, it is positive because it clarifies one aspect.
Right.
It demystifies the aspect of when it should be applied and what it is. But overall, I think it needs to have a relook because it is impacting JDAs, especially today. A developer can hardly get a JDA in the commercial segment space.
Right. It's mostly residential.
Yes, mostly residential where there are some set-offs and you're allowed to exempt it. But in a commercial, there's no chance because in a commercial, he doesn't usually sell. Most of the commercial buildings are not strata sale, what we call, but they're sold as a block after it is built out, OC'd, and then leased out.
Right.
So the whole tax implication is very high.
Right.
And there is no real exemption. So this is impacting the whole thing because I personally feel, though the government might feel that residential is more important than commercial, commercial is even more important because commercial creates the job employment.
Right.
If I start killing commercial and industrial, then you don't have manufacturing and job generation.
Fair.
Okay?
Yes.
So I think it's as important as affordable housing because this is where you create jobs because nobody builds a building just for show.
Right.
He has to occupy. That means you're creating some space for startups, for entrepreneurs, for SMEs or MSMEs. They'll come and occupy it. Or let's say for GCCs, which we desperately require.
Yes.
Correct? So all these are necessary things. This is a welcome judgment that it clarifies certain things. But having opened this box, as you have asked, I would feel this GST sort of application needs to be rationalized, thought through a little bit, and kept as simple as possible so that we can get back onto the fast track of doing more JDAs.
Right.
True. In fact, when it comes to this particular judgment itself, apart from it being a landmark judgment which people feel will be followed by a lot of the other states and courts as well, where they're facing similar discussions on when is the GST applicable.
Right.
This kind of a judgment will actually give the builders a little bit more breathing room as well, because a lot of the JDAs where the minute the agreement was signed and the builders had to pay the GST, they are now actually being allowed to recover that money and get it back.
Right.
And allow them to actually plan and wait for them to start the project before they're actually taxed on it, And even a small move like that actually brings a lot of relief to a lot of the smaller builders and a lot of the newer players in the market. Now, for on a very big project, it might not have that major of an impact, but on all the other real estate players, it is going to make a big difference. And to that extent, it is actually a very good move, because while GST has been a game changer in real estate and all the other industries as well, in this case, it was a very there was a lot of gray areas, when it came to real estate construction and GST.
Right.
And with JDAs, it became even more complicated.
Right.
So now that at least they've started addressing the issue, they've clarified when GST will be applicable from. Hopefully, they'll start looking into it further and figure out how to make it even more easier to understand, process, plan accordingly, So, because it's such a big component of every project, it should not be the reason why projects are getting delayed or stalled.
Right.
As you said, if JDAs are increasing at 150% per year in this country, then we also need to make sure our infrastructure and laws catch up to that, and help maintain that.
So the GST slab, which is 18%, has not changed. Just the time that the builder has to make a payment has changed. How does this, or does it rather, impact home buyers?
It doesn't impact home buyers. See, the problem is you have a better grip on the value at the time of position because it's on unsold stock and all that, they will look at it. So you have a better grip rather than estimating and forecasting.
Yeah.
And it helps in the cash flow
Okay.
because you're deferring it by a couple of years,
Right.
the GST payout.
Yeah.
So to that extent, it will help in the cash flow. In a residential, it will help because he would have sold some properties. In commercial, it doesn't help much because he wouldn't have sold, but you're deferred it
Right.
instead of having it upfront. So it helps in the cash flow. So it helps marginally in your interest cost during construction, maybe.
Right.
But let's not say it is such a structural change that it will impact prices and you'll suddenly see the prices drifting downward because of this.
Understood.
I think that is a bit of a stretch.
Understood.
The rate has remained the same.
Correct.
Unless there's a rate change, is not going to affect the pricing. All this has done is deferred the payment, which just gives them some breathing room more than anything else.
Do you see it reshaping a deal structure?
I don't see it reshaping the deal structure. Maybe some more JDA deals will be done because most people were not very keen on fronting it up.
Yes.
So more JDAs will be done because I personally think still the JD structure itself is complicated. Like say redevelopment is outside
Yes.
GST.
Yeah.
So why is redevelopment outside? It's also actually a JD agreement. The existing society has
Correct.
land and development rights. It's going to a developer and giving it to them and saying, okay, you give me a better flat with a higher this thing and create more space. So these are all little things which have to be think GST or FSI and TDR is not there, but it can be there in under certain circumstances. So these are all the gray areas, as Abhay said, that can create a bit of confusion in the mind of a builder.
Right.
And I always feel a simplified structure and a lower tax structure is always better complied and creates less legal hurdles for any project. So is it one positive step? Yes. Is it earth shattering and will it make a big change? No. But it's a positive step towards the rationalization of how GST is applied in the real estate structure.
It might not change the agreement structure per se, but what it might do is agreements that were being held back or stalled or kept at bay due to the tax component that you had to pay upfront, those then people might
Go
go
forward.
forward and go ahead and sign the agreements at least.
The next topic I'd like to discuss is SEBI's decision to reclassify REITs as equity instruments for mutual funds. This now allows REITs to count towards equity allocation limits and even enter equity indices. InvITs, on the other hand, have maintained their hybrid status. My first question would be to ask you, how do we interpret this?
Well, you have to interpret it again in a broader way. When REITs and InvITs started a few years back, there was utter confusion
Right.
because they're not shares, they're technically units you hold.
Right.
So because there were units you are holding and because it seemed to have some sort of a fixed income component, especially InvITs have a high component fixed income, if not all, and REITs have substantial fixed income component.
Right.
So the question came in, is it a debt instrument or equity instrument, especially for mutual funds?
Right.
Because mutual funds are themed as per how they invest in what structures and in what industries do they invest.
Yeah.
So if it is an equity fund, mutual fund, they're supposed to invest in equities.
Right.
So was REIT an equity or not was the big question.
Right.
You understand? And there was confusion about it. So ultimately they decided it'll all be hybrid or whatever it is. And they were going. So this clarification by SEBI is, in my opinion, a landmark decision.
Okay.
A clear landmark decision because it's clearly saying that a REIT, though it is held as units,
Right.
it is to be considered as equity
Right.
because basically you are buying units in a ready property or a bit of underdeveloped property which will be leased out and the rental income will be distributed as dividend.
Right.
Okay. So to that extent, even though it might have a fixed income component, there's always a risk. If it lies vacant, you won't have rent. Or if there's a COVID-like situation, God forbid, then you'll naturally rents are impacted.
Yeah.
People don't pay rent, so they will pay lesser rents. So there is always a risk involved. And the underdeveloped portion, anyway, there's a risk because he has to build it, he has to lease it, and then only he starts getting rentals.
Right.
So this classification per se is a very good move by the SEBI to clarify it. They have left InvITs as hybrid, which is also good because it is largely a fixed component one. It fluctuates only because it is dependent upon the toll or the tariffs or anything. That's why it is fluctuating. But other than that, it is more or less fixed. It's in a band which it will move. It can't really go above the band or below the band. So it's more of a hybrid. But this helps the mutual fund industry to take up larger exposures to these two instruments.
Understood.
So basically, this was always the plan to classify REITs under equity eventually. They did not start off like that because it took us a while to understand how REITs work and how will it do in this market. But just like it is done internationally, where it is considered an equity instrument, now that SEBI has classified it out here as well as an equity investment, it is not just a good move, it's a big boost to the REIT market itself. One, as that rightly pointed out, mutual funds will be able to invest a lot more heavily into REITs. And just with the judgment coming out itself, or SEBI clarifying this itself, has made all the 5-6 REITs that are in the country currently, they've all gotten a bump in their pricing. They're already starting to do well, and people are excited about what's to come. So in this case, yes, it's not just a good move, it's a move that will also change the way people start looking at investing in real estate. Because now when they've done this, you're not just saying, okay, this is an equity, now we're equating units to stocks. It's not so much as that, as much as them saying, hey, no, this is a financial instrument.
Right.
So it's a real estate financial instrument that you are investing in, and hence comes under equity and can benefit from everyone who's all the funds that are planning to invest, that would have earlier had to only do it as an alternate investment or a hybrid. Now they can put in their equity component also, a part of it, into real estate, and will kind of change the whole within mutual funds also. This might become a slightly safeguard component, within their equity portfolios. They might decide to have a little bit of commercial real estate just to safeguard against the ups and downs of the market per se.
Right. So the underlying asset remains to be real estate. But can we expect equity like volatility with REITs?
See, whenever you classify something as equity, you also have to understand it goes along with higher risk and higher volatility.
Right.
Because you cannot say it's equity but lower risk.
Yes.
Okay. So it goes along with higher risk and higher volatility. So SEBI is, so if you want to be a little bit contrarian, you'll say is SEBI saying REITs are of higher risk? Yes, they are. Because like any other thing, it also has its own risk, as I explained. So it is a higher risk and higher volatility game.
Right.
So people will come in and go out, and when people come in and go out, price discoveries will become, fluctuating all the time. So there will be the vagaries of the market, which will be also inflicted on this sector. But I don't think overall, as Abhay said, that even in the equity segment, this would still may be construed as at the lower end of the risk spectrum.
Right.
Okay. Because it is of a real asset underlying a financial instrument sitting on top of a real physical asset.
Right.
Where cash flows are more or less determined. So it's like, when we take an exposure to large cap companies in the market, why we say large cap is less exposure, less risky,
Risk.
because their cash flows are more determined.
Right.
You don't expect a big company's cash flows to wildly fluctuate.
Right.
They'll grow incrementally. Profits will be fluctuating a little, but they're more or less stable, like oil tankers in the ocean.
Right.
You understand? So when you say a REIT is also like that, it's a large oil tanker.
Yeah.
It's more or less stable. There's a physical asset. The cash flows are more or less determined. So it's not going to suddenly disappear. There can
Right.
be events which will make it fluctuate. So there will be the question of volatility, but not as high as when you try on a small cap company, for example,
Okay.
where the company's fortunes are always linked to the market demand. It can change. Somebody else could be eating into his market share and so on and so forth. So to that extent, I think the volatility will be there, but it will be much in a narrower band than in a very broad band like what you see in other stocks sometimes.
Right.
So currently, there was around 0.5% of your
Participation.
participation within REITs from from mutual funds and
Yes.
stuff. So now that this classification has come across, that percentage will slowly start going up. Depending on to what percentage it goes, there will be some fluctuations that one will see as one sees in mutual funds. But just like by and large, they're considered more or less safe investments. REITs also, I feel, will stick to that even within the equity paradigm. And I was saying it's not going to be fluctuate so wildly because the underlying asset is a commercial building at the end of the day,
Right.
So unless that value drastically changes, it's not going to cause that many price fluctuations.
Right.
It's just going to make the market more accessible, and I guess there'll be more players in the market that'll come into the market.
Yes. So I was going to build on that. There's only like you said, 0.5% participation. So there's a lot of scope for growing. Do you see this decision widening the market, deepening the market? Do you see?
It does, because more than retail investors, when institutional investors come in, like mutual funds,
Yeah.
they tend to be far more on the ball
Right.
to play. So, how they look at the outlook and whether they buy, sell. So naturally, there will be a widening and deepening of the market, in my
Right.
opinion. So, and this will be helpful also, because it'll bring in more money into the thing. It'll become far more market friendly.
Right.
The liquidity would be higher. But there's another dimension to it, which sometimes I think analysts overlook, or maybe they don't, is that, see, REIT per se, the way it has been structured is to be a sort of a low risk, low to medium returns
Okay.
instrument.
Right.
So it always goes, in India also, it will be going in the range of 10 to 12% returns overall.
Yeah.
Dividends would be in the range of 6 to 7%.
Yes.
There might be a capital appreciation of
Yeah.
4-5%. So it will move in that range. So for a mutual fund manager,
Right.
when he allocates his fund in equity and he wants to have a sort of a delta return over and above the general equity market, which is, say, measured by the index,
Right.
he will find it more difficult to beat it with a
REIT.
REIT
Understood.
as compared to a company which will have a higher sort of a return, because the REIT suddenly cannot give you 22% return. It will be
Yes.
unlikely.
Yeah.
Okay. So he will use it more as a base, as a check and balance, to ensure that if there are fluctuations in the market, it doesn't erode the whole fund of his. So he will use it more as a check and balance, as a hedge,
Right.
what we call, rather than as something which will drive his returns.
Okay. Right.
So his way of looking at it, the way I would look at it, would be in that fashion.
Okay.
So will it increase? Yes, because everybody will want a hedge.
Yes.
Everybody wants in that their so-called portfolio a hedge also. So it will make people buy into it, companies and mutual funds. But would it really drive larger returns for the REIT market? Not necessarily, because it's pretty much in the band.
Okay.
Just because there is something there's more participation, it'll create liquidity, but not necessarily a higher appreciation because of this.
Okay.
See, that's actually absolutely right on that. Theoretically, that is exactly what is supposed to happen. But now there's a high chance with the move having just happened that the existing REITs will not be positioning or marketing themselves to these mutual funds as just a steady investment, because some of them have shown high returns actually in the last year or two, including one having gone up to 36% year on year 20 or year on year return. So now those are some high numbers, and yes,
Right.
those are not sustainable at all in the long run, especially not, and it will come down to being a safer asset within the equity class soon enough. But I don't know, I have a feeling that the REITs that have done well might try to push themselves also as a high return investment towards some of these mutual funds and institutional players as well,
Right.
saying, hey, we are not just safe, you might also make some money with us,
Yeah, but there, what happens, Abhay, is when you try to project such numbers, I don't know which one has done very well, maybe some of them have done, but when you have an institutional investor, they tend to take it with a lot of salt. Unlike a retail investor, he won't be taken in because it will be one-off. So most probably one-off instances will be taken out of the balance sheet
Out
and
of
profit
the-
off to stabilize and normalize what is the steady return. So yes, it might happen in a one-off case, but not as a steady case, not in the history of REITs, not in the sort of asset class it represents.
Correct.
You understand? So generally people, as I said, would look at it, if I was a fund manager, to look at it as a hedge, not as something which will drive alpha returns for me. It's a more of a hedge, because I wouldn't bet on a REIT to drive alpha returns, because that's not the way the REIT has been built.
Next, I'd like to discuss the Supreme Court will soon hear over 24 review petitions challenging its May 2024 judgment that barred retrospective environmental clearances for projects. This judgment also reinforced the constitutional right to a pollution-free environment. This is said to have major implications for industries and real estate projects in India. I'd like to begin with asking you, how do you see this judgment reshaping the balance between development needs and fundamental rights in India?
I think this is a constant tussle which you see between judiciary and legislature, because legislature tries to be more practical and looking at ground realities. Judiciary has to interpret the law the way it has been enacted and say whether it is as per the provisions of the law. So naturally, there's a healthy check and balance out there.
Right.
The fact of the matter is, when it comes to the Environment Act, and whatever related things, conservation of forests, trees, water bodies, rivers, all these put together, what you have in the Ministry of MOEF and CC, climate
Yes.
change.
Correct.
What do they stand for? They are supposed to protect the biodiversity of India. They're supposed to protect the environment and the ecological balance of India, so that our development is not at the cost of destroying something.
Correct.
Correct? At the same time, whenever you develop something, what we would loosely call as culture, it always is going to be anti-nature.
Correct.
Whatever I do,
Yes.
it has to be anti-nature, because by nature, it is everything. So whatever we have started anywhere, it has been anti-nature.
Correct.
Now, when the developed countries have done these infrastructures left, right, and center, nobody has really asked about the ecological impact.
Right.
You understand, whether there were bridges or whether you see even a channel between England and France. So everybody did it because it was necessary, it was for convenience, it was the development path.
Right.
But now, because of climate change and environmentalists, we have a lot more awareness that this is impacting.
Right.
So naturally, there is a lot of pushback from environmentalists saying, do you really need this? Do you
Yeah.
really need to reclaim land?
Right.
Do you really need to destroy this mangrove? Do you really need to cut down on this forest?
Right.
Should this hill be brought down?
Yeah.
Which is absolutely valid. But can we sacrifice development all the time? Not necessarily. We can't.
Right.
If suppose for whatever reason the density of Mumbai, the traffic needs something, or the density of Bangalore, it'll need some sort of place where it needs to take over some sort of a land that has to be developed,
Right.
and developed as infrastructure or as building, it might be very necessary.
Right.
And that sort of a sensitivity is what the ministry has to bring to the table.
Right.
But when it brings to the table, it has to see whether the law has to be amended. Otherwise, it would be interpreted strictly as per the letter of the law
Right.
and may get stuck in courts.
Right.
And what happens in this whole tussle is the persons who suffer are the stakeholders of that project,
Yeah.
because they're now stuck in courts.
Correct.
Okay. So this is a sort of a reminder to us what Supreme Court judgment says: the government has no right to start doing retrospective amendments, in the sense to say, okay, you have already violated it, we will slap a penalty or something and we will let it go.
Right.
You can only do it with prospective effect.
Right.
Basically, exactly. That is what they started 2017, 2021.
Yes.
They basically just gave out those
But-
notices saying, hey, you guys, we know you all have violated all these environmental norms and gone ahead and done the project. We're not saying we have to stop the project or pull down the project, but you have to pay XYZ fines to
Right.
make up for it. You know?
Well, the intention was to bring them under the purview of law, to not let them remain outside. So,
Correct.
okay, we
Correct.
tax you, but now we can monitor you. So
Correct.
the
But
intention was, I
The
would think,
intention
still
was good. That's why I
Yeah.
said sometimes the spirit and the law clash.
Yes,
So the question is, the way to do it would have been to change the law.
perhaps.
To say, yes, the government will have the authority to pass retrospective sort of amendments also,
Right.
so that these can be condoned and penalized or anything. Then naturally the court will not strike it down,
Right.
because that's the law and that has been approved and passed.
Correct.
So whenever somebody tries to take a shortcut to say that this is how I interpret the law and I have the right to do it, then naturally the Supreme Court will also put its balance, check and balance, to say that, look, this is not the way you can interpret the law. And that's exactly what's happened.
Correct.
But I think out here, the broader thing which one has to consider is, we are in the industry of built up environment and we are
Yes.
talking about it and we disseminate news and research on it, is whether what is the role which environmentalists play. They play a very critical role, because
Right.
not all developments have to be at the cost of environment.
Yes.
But there's certain developments that might impact the environment. Then the question comes is, what is the solution? The solution is, what is the compensation you'll do? Like
Right.
afforestation and deforestation, sort of a
Right.
thing. If you need to cut the trees, can you plant the trees somewhere else? Can you plant more forests?
Right.
Can we have green lungs? Can we have
Yeah.
open spaces? Can we cut down on vehicular pollution or heavy industries? So all this is something which has to be balanced.
Right.
And that has to be explained even to the environmental groups, because they sometimes, I think, become blinkered, and the government in a hurry to develop also becomes blinkered to say, look, I need this project and it has to go at record
Right.
speed. So somewhere I think the ministry has a very, very critical role to play to figure out how to balance the varied interests.
Right.
Otherwise, tomorrow in many projects, we are seeing a lot of cost overrun because their design changes.
Right.
And the design changes is happening because of local environments and local interest groups who say, this is impacting my livelihood.
Right.
So this doesn't work. But then you have to see what is good for the majority.
Right.
So it basically then boils down to simple things like what is the actual environmental impact. Now, if the impact is something smaller, where say a few, where say a few, say if we take Bombay for example, where maybe a fishing village has to be moved from point A to point B instead in order to complete an infrastructure project, it's one thing. But the same thing for that same project, if we are destroying a whole bunch of uh,
Mangroves.
our mangroves, then that is a totally different issue because those mangroves protect us from tidal waves.
Right.
Now that is something, it's not environmental, it's not real estate, it's not governance, it's common sense. You need
Right.
that.
Yes.
And sometimes we need to learn to draw that balance between how much environmental protection is needed, what falls under
Yes.
common sense, and what goes over and above,
Yeah.
where we are fighting over every small thing.
Right.
And then some things in Bombay itself, again, we've seen with the metro project also, it became a big ego clash between the two governments
Yeah.
as to where to have the shed.
Yeah.
Whether should we have it in RA or should we have it somewhere else? RA
Correct.
being our green lungs of the city.
Yes.
Now those things are really silly to be debating because they are needed. You cannot just en masse go and
Right.
cut out millions of trees and
Yeah.
expect it all to be hunky-dory.
Right.
Climate change is real. Yes, the West got away with it. Now we can't sit and cry about it 50 years later, no? कि भाई उन लोग ने किया तो हम लोग भी करेंगे करके.
No, I don't think the West got away with it. I think this is where we need to look at it in a more tempered fashion. Whatever climate change effects we are seeing today, even in the West,
Right.
cities are getting flooded.
Yeah.
There are
Wildfires.
landslides.
Yeah.
So all this is happening because of the development they did earlier.
Correct.
Nobody gets away with it.
Yes.
You understand?
Yeah.
So the same thing will happen to us also
Right.
if we are not careful. So to temper what you're saying, Abhay, the question is if mangroves are being cut, can we again put in the mangroves?
Right.
You understand? Just because the bridge is there doesn't mean the mangroves can't be there below it.
Right.
It's not necessary that they all have to die.
Yeah.
You understand? So there are certain ways of doing it. If certain trees have to be cut, then they can be expanded in some other way, in some other fashion. The same thing. The lungs need not shrink. They can change, contour it. Because yes, I might need the development also.
Right.
Why do I need development? Because that is what is giving us money. Everybody wants comfort. Everybody wants luxury. Everybody wants the money to go around.
Right.
So we are not wanting to regress into the caves.
Right.
We are wanting to progress into the skyscraper. So this is the balance which is necessary. And basically, we need not digress too much into this, otherwise it becomes an environmental debate. But I think this is the way I look at it positively, it is a healthy check and balance between the government and the Supreme Court,
Right.
what you have seen.
Yeah. Well, I mean, with public infrastructure projects, they do, when they put the tender out, they do seek public opinion. Perhaps there could be something similar
I don't
adopted.
think so.
No,
See, that
this
is
is
something which I generally say that's only one of the factors, public and local opinion. It is a critical factor. But you also need expert opinion. No?
Yeah, this is a scientific thing. You need
But
scientific.
you're not stopping
input.
an expert from weighing in.
Yes, but what I'm saying is you don't have to invite them. You need to have them on your own rolls first
Okay.
to check it. The local interest group is to see whether you are spoiling the culture. You
Understood.
have to be heritage, culture, history. We have to give prominence to that. We cannot just wipe it away. That is the
Understood.
local. But the expertise need not be on if you want to come, you come.
On a
It ha-
voluntary basis.
Yes, it has to be mandatory for me that the best experts have looked at it to see, can you cut the mangroves? Can you cut the trees? Should you put it here?
Understood.
That is the given. That should be there.
All right. That's a wrap for this week's episode. Thank you so much for tuning in. Do share your thoughts and feedback in the comment section below. Follow us on our social media handles and hit the bell icon for regular notifications. Until next time, thank you so much for tuning in.